The Ending Writes Itself by Evelyn Clarke. That's our next buzz book. It's coming from Harper on April 7th. And now I'm reading from a script. It was a dark and stormy night when New York Times bestselling author V.E. Schwab proposed an absurd idea to longtime friend and screenwriter Kat Clarke that they should write a book together. V had made quite a name for herself, including the Shades of Magic series, The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue, totally love, and Bury Our Bones in the Midnight Soil, but had sworn she'd never co-write a novel. While Kat, following a tumultuous career as an editor and the author of several YA novels, including Girlhood and Entangled, had fled the publishing industry, none of us had ever thought about that, to work in even more tumultuous film industry, swearing she'd never return to books. But that night, as they switched from tea to something stronger, which we should all be doing at this point, Evelyn Clarke was born, and so was this locked room thriller that Stephen King has pronounced to be in the running for the best mystery in 2026. And he also said it's reminiscent of Agatha Christie, quote, in the best way. I'll leave you with this line from the chapter titled The Horror Writer. Quote, the knife slides in, it parts the flesh with ease. Who knew they were talking about a tomato? Okay, their editor is Sarah Stein, executive editor Harper, who may share with us whether it's more difficult to edit one author or two co-authors together.
I'm very excited to be introducing you to the wonderful authors behind Evelyn Clarke, Kat Clarke, and V. Schwab. This is one of the smartest and funniest pieces of commercial fiction that I've had the chance to read in ages. And I mean that in general, not just the books that I edit. This never happens, but every time I read a draft of this book, I enjoyed it more and more. If you were to see my marked up manuscript, all the comment bubbles would be like, ha, LOL, oh my God, because I just was so delighted by reading this book. The Ending Writes Itself is set on a remote Scottish island where 7 writers whose careers have failed to launch have gathered to write the ending in the final volume of the recently deceased Arthur Fletch's mystery series. In exchange, they are promised a mind-boggling amount of money, as well as a chance to revive their careers. This is a book that feels so incredibly now in how it mashes up familiar genre tropes in order to create something that feels incredibly fresh. Yes, there is a dark and stormy night, and the characters do drop like flies, but the how and the why of it all will keep you racing through the pages. It's a high concept book with a real sense of joy. And ultimately, once you've gotten past the rapidly growing pile of dead bodies, it's a tribute to the most terrifying act of all, putting pen to paper and telling a story. I would love to talk with you, Kat and V, about how this collaboration came to be. I know you all are friends and live quite close to each other in Edinburgh. And can you tell us about the gestation of this book?
Okay, I have to go here. V and I have been friends for 15 years. And the important things you need to know are that she swore she would never co-write a book and would never write anything without fantasy in it. And I swore that I would never return to publishing, which I left after a tumultuous career as an editor and YA writer. And yet here we are, and it's all Victoria's fault.
It is. It's always my fault. I had an idea that was neither fantasy nor something that I, to be frank, wanted to tackle by myself. I knew it had publishing trauma in it, something that Kat and I are both really well versed in. And so I showed up at her kitchen table one day and said, hey, I have a really weird idea. And at the time, Kat is still a very talented screenwriter. And I said, if I write this book, would you adapt the screenplay version of it? And Kat immediately was like, yeah, sure. Sounds like fun. You go off and write the book. And I went off and started writing, and I realized, hey, that's a lot of work. And it's way more fun if I make you do it with me. So I went back to Kat's kitchen table and I said, Kat, let's write the book together. And Kat pointed out that she had left publishing and that I did not believe in co-writing. And we both proceeded to eat our words over the next 6 months while we developed this story.
So it was better than therapy, right?
It was really handy.
So there's a lot in here about like exorcising, is that the right way you pronounce it? Sorry.
Mm.
I'm not just exercising trauma, I'm exorcising trauma. But what did you find most cathartic about writing this book? How do you feel as if the book helped you think about your own writing and publishing journeys?
Ooh. I'll start. Yeah, I think that it is cathartic. Publishing is a really lonely space for authors traditionally. It's one of the reasons Pat and I first bonded when we were both in YA, but it is you're attached to someone else as a life raft. And it's one of the things is because publishing is a business. Writing is an art and publishing is a business. And so often it can feel like we're isolated as creators. And that means that whatever you go through something difficult, it can feel like an indictment of you instead of the fact that the industry's hard and writing's hard and publishing's hard. And so I knew from us being friends for 15 years, we had shared a lot of our horror stories to each other over drinks at the table. But I found it a deeply cathartic act to be able to process it through these avatars of these 7 writers.
And every story in the book, every horror story that happens to these authors that they relate in the book has happened to either they or me or someone we're friends with. So
Yeah.
it's only barely fiction.
I was gonna say, it's shocking. I don't think we ended up with so many more horror stories than we could put in the book.
Yeah, we
So-
had to edit them down.
Don't tell me there is a sequel. And on behalf of the book industry, I would like to apologize. But I also feel as if there's something very strange about publishing in which reading is this thing that is so internal. It's you and a book and your imagination and your powers of empathy. And yet we come together as a group to support that writing and to celebrate it and to bring it out into the world. And I wonder how the act of writing changed when it stopped just being you and either your pad of paper, your computer screen, however it is that you do write, and started becoming a conversation with a collaborator.
I think it was a lot less lonely. And I think the great thing about having 2 of you is like, when one of you is having a crisis of confidence or crisis of faith, the other one can buoy them up. But we're never both up at the same time. We're balancing each other out. And also just being able to hand off the work to each other. Like it wasn't an easy process. It didn't make it half as much work, but there was a lot more fun involved, at least for me. V, was there fun involved?
There's so much fun involved, I think. And also, yeah, it makes it a conversation. It makes it a collaboration. It doesn't make it less work, but it sure makes it less lonely. I do think there's also a very particular nuance to how Pat and I work, which is many co-authors will split along points of view. And that does maybe make it half as much work. And they say, hey, you take points of view 1, 3, 5, I'll take 2, 4, 6. That's not how Pat and I work. We really want Evelyn Clarke to have a voice. We want it to feel like one person who happens to be an amalgamation of the 2 of us. And so we build it like a house where we build the scaffolding and the infrastructure of it together. And then we go into each room and we build the room and decorate the room and furnish the room and kind of work over each other, sentence on sentence, so that both of us have touched everything and we don't move on until we're both really, this is the best version. And so what that means is the 2 of us have held hands on every single moment in the book. One of us might throw out a line of dialogue and the other one throws out a flourish of prose, but there's no point at which it's that scene's your problem, Kat. I don't need to worry about that.
Although I must say, when it comes to beautiful descriptions, that is V's job, because I'm just like, you're like, but what does the house look like? I'm like, it has a door. There are some windows.
This is the difference. The only difference is that I am the kind of, I know you've seen the apple test of how do you picture this apple in your mind. And I am the kind of person who has to picture it in its entirety and be able to walk through the house. And Kat, you are less but you are, from your screenwriting background, you are so good at these wit, like dark witticism and humor, and walking that line between the macabre and the funny is so much Kat's back. So we know
We have to appreciate, because this book is quite funny, even as you're on the edge of your seat and you're wanting to find out what happened. And you also like care about
And you know what else? It doesn't feel like
They're not
work.
little stick figures running through a house, which I find sometimes a thriller can be. So we have time for one more question, and I'm gonna put you all on the spot, and I want to know, what was the biggest disagreement you had while you were writing? And how did that get resolved? And how did that make the book more? I feel like collaboration is so much about coming together and finding compromise. And you are two very strong women. So I'm curious about how that happened.
I don't this sounds fake. This sounds fake, but I don't think we had a major disagreement in the writing.
I think it's similarly because Kat has an editorial background and I'm a very editorial writer. When there would be a moment wherein Kat would have one solve and I would have another and we wouldn't be on the same page, we found the thirds. So we never really, neither one of us had to give. It simply became sometimes in editorial, you get a note and you're like, I agree with the note, but I don't love the execution that's being suggested to fix the note. So it became much more, I think Kat always wanted things to be funnier and I always wanted things to be darker. So there were moments that Kat actually had to fight to keep the humor and she was always right. Like she was always right. Like I remember there's a moment in the book where Jackson calls on Alexa after the power is down out. And I just kept being like, I don't get it. And Kat was like, you gotta keep this line in. And then by the time we got to like final edits, it's one of my favorite lines. And I just had to trust. So I think we trust each other. That's part one, is we just trust each other. We know each other's strengths. And if there's something that we're going back and forth on, like I'm thinking of the scene on the stairs before a point of view changes in the second half with the typewriter, like we go over and go up so we both feel as good about it.
The truth is we actually arm wrestle and see who wins. And it's always me.
I'm just very strong.
You're really strong.
I would love that. Although I don't know how strong I would be if I was like, no, I just need this final line of your book to be changed. And whoever like heads or tails, it's me or you.
Yes. We can do rock, paper, scissors with you next time, Sarah. We'll do rock, paper,
That
scissors.
sounds good. I'm glad we now set up our process for book 2. I am so thrilled for this book to be in the world. I've been talking about it for over a year now, and we were keeping your name secret for a while. So it's been very fun to say what we're actually doing. And I am just so excited for everybody to read this book.
That was great. Thank you so much. And once again, the ending writes itself. And it is really, you can't even tell it's a collaboration. The collaboration is so smooth. It's really seamless. It's a beautifully written book.